Power of Market. Hi everyone, and welcome to Nora's The Power of Marketplaces webinar trilogy. This is going to be the first of 3 webinars in partnership with Marketplacer, where we'll be unveiling the next wave of marketplace evolution set to supercharge e-commerce. I'm Stephanie Byrne, the CEO of Amblique, and I'll be your host today. And before I introduce our great panelists, I'd just like to cover off on a bit of housekeeping. So the format of this session will run for approximately 45 minutes while we do a panel Q&A. And then after that, we'll have 10 to 15 minutes to answer any questions that you might have. So I really encourage you throughout the session to make sure that you post any questions in the chat, and feel free to do it as you think of the questions, and I'll make sure to get to them at the end. Also, just a reminder that the session will be recorded. So once it's finished, you'll be sent a link so you can access it afterwards, and also feel free to share it with anyone who wasn't able to make it today. So today we're here to talk about the evolution of the retail marketplace, the imminent opportunity and impact. So at Amblique, I'm fortunate enough to work with some of Australia's largest retailers, and they all saw phenomenal growth last year. And while I would love to credit that wholly to Amblique, I think we can all agree that COVID was the driving factor. But that leaves a lot of us asking, what's next? How can I continue to see these kind of results in the future? And that's really where having a solid marketplace strategy comes in, and that's what we're here to explore today. So the concept of marketplaces has come a long way since the days of eBay and Amazon, as retailers establish themselves as online destinations within their own right. So I'm very excited to have with me here today 2 lovely guests to explore how we can leverage marketplaces to accelerate growth. First of all, we have Angus McDonald, the CEO of Barbecues Galore. Angus, would you mind introducing yourself?
Thanks, Steph, and great to be here today. I'm the CEO of Barbecues Galore, which is a national retailer of barbecues, outdoor furniture, accessories and heating. We've got 86 stores across Australia, and also a rapidly growing online presence. And we're really excited about the opportunity to talk about the journey we're on, and in particular, what we're doing around marketplace today.
Great. Thanks so much, Angus. Next up, we have Richard Hankin, the VP of Sales at Marketplacer. Rich, would you mind telling us a bit about yourself?
Thanks, Stephanie. Yes, as I said, I lead sales for the Marketplacer business. For those of you that don't know, Marketplacer is a software as a service platform that enables retailers to create their own marketplace strategies by leveraging our solution. I've been a Marketplacer just under 2 years. My background, I ran commercial partnerships for eBay, Australia, New Zealand, and this market. So have a reasonable level of experience and have touched a lot of retailers along that journey. So thrilled to be here with Angus and you today.
Great, thank you so much. Well, I figure let's just dive right in. As I was saying, in the past year, we've seen a whole lot of growth online, and retailers have invested more than ever in optimizing the experience for the customer. So Angus, I think it would be great if we could start by you just giving us a little bit of a lead up as to what Barbecues Galore have been focusing on over this past year.
Well, thanks, Steph. And it is a really important context to consider as we talk about the role that the marketplace strategy plays in our business. It is actually part of a much broader transformation of our brand that certainly goes beyond just what's happened in the last year with COVID. If we think about the journey that Barbecues Galore has been on through this time, you know, we've got a brand that's been around for over 40 years and is very well established and well recognised in Australia, but perhaps for some time hadn't changed a lot in a number of years. And so at the time that I joined the business, we were very focused on really accelerating and the modernisation of our business. And so through that time, we've done a lot of work, and we've made some significant changes to our store network and store experience. And we've rolled our new format stores out to now more than 10 locations and are really focused on continuing that journey. We've done a lot of work around our brand and much more clearly defining what it is that makes Barbecues Galore special and different from the other places that you can buy the products that we sell, and really much more clearly defining why it is that we are the destination for that product in Australia. We've done a lot of work on our range through that time, and that's included turning over a large portion of product where we've discontinued a number of items, and launched many more new products in our business. More new products launched in our business last year, in fact, than we have in any year for many years before. So it's been a huge change, but also under the surface, there's been a lot of investment in systems and processes as well. And after the last 2 years, we've completed the implementation of a new ERP system, and we've put in place a new order management system, a number of other pieces, but most recently launching Salesforce Commerce Cloud and Salesforce Marketing Cloud as we start to really accelerate our development of the opportunity for an integrated omni-channel strategy with a really robust and compelling e-commerce presence as a key part of that equation. So it's a much broader transformation of our brand through this time, but really recognizing that today, few people in a considered purchase category like ours start that journey anywhere other than with a lot of research online, hopefully perhaps eventually some physical engagement in one of our stores, but also a lot of people doing things like click and collect and other pieces. And the opportunity for the marketplace element of that is really then about completing that destination offer for us as really asserting our position of authority in our category to complete that assortment going beyond the four walls of our stores.
Amazing. That is so much transformation that has happened. And I think we've all seen that and recognized that, right? Like, you've done an amazing job, I think, of really transforming people's experience of Barbecues Galore. So when we're talking, I guess, about retailers implementing a marketplace strategy on their own website, I guess I want to get to the crux of what we're really talking about. And Rich, I think you'll be able to help me with this. Because I think a lot of people get a bit confused. We talk about marketplaces, and retailers are used to selling via different channels, right? And we've seen that over the past number of years with the idea of actually turning their online store into a marketplace. Can you tell us kind of more about the thinking behind that?
Yeah, of course. So I think you touched on the right point. Historically, a marketplace strategy for a retailer was about selling on third-party mega marketplaces. And I was obviously part of that from an eBay experience. And that, as an external channel, that was a strategy and still is a strategy, and is a separate idea to what we're talking about now. So the concept that we're talking about now is, when you distill it down, is enabling retailers such as Barbecues Galore that have spent a lot of time and investment over the past few years really growing that digital audience that they have. So they've got this asset, this community, this loyal base of customers, and they've got this asset that they can sweat. And one of the strategies that has been emerging, and obviously Marketplacer as a platform is a big part of that, is around how do I expand my assortment and my product range to take advantage and increase the CLV of the customers that I have. And so a marketplace strategy, when you really dumb it down, is about enabling a retailer to sell products they don't own, sell categories they don't own, and by leveraging a third-party marketplace strategy. So first-party product that sits in Barbecues Galore warehouse and sits in their store network, sitting right alongside what we call third-party product from a third-party seller network, that in its simplest form is product that is shipped directly from the supplier to the customer, all the while still a transacted order between Barbecues Galore and their customer. And so that opportunity, which we'll go into in a lot more detail, is a very strong growth strategy, because it allows businesses such as Barbecues Galore to try out incremental adjacent categories to what they do without the cost of buying the inventory, without the cost of warehousing, fulfilling, picking and packing, all the cogs that are associated with retail product. So it allows them to grow really fast, test and learn new categories. And when you actually distill it down, sell more things to the customers they have and acquire more customers because they're selling categories they've never sold before.
Yeah, definitely well said. I think the point around them being able to coexist as well, you can kind of have your channel management strategy, and then you can have this online marketplace strategy within your current website. Makes a lot of sense. Angus, did you have anything to add, I guess, in relation to that, and why Barbecues made the decision to invest in this strategy?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that people wrestle with is whether this is an approach that is in competition with your core offer, and that's not the case at all. And it's not about overlapping with or duplicating your core range. and it's particularly in our case, as a destination retailer and a specialist retailer in a particular category, we're always going to be focused on getting our core offer right and running that through our own distribution channels. This is about then curating those complementary supporting categories that go around our core offer. And these might be products that we might not typically range in our network ourselves, but they make sense for us to sell, supporting our core customer value proposition. And to Richard's point, actually increasing those opportunities for us to remain connected and engaged to our customers over a longer period of time. So whether that's increasing basket value or frequency of transaction, it's just an opportunity for us to continue to deepen the relationship we have with our customers and present them a more comprehensive solution, which they would expect of us as a destination retailer for everything out in the backyard and patio.
And I think an important point I'd add to that, just to echo Angus's point, is when you think about, and we're not here to describe the differences between eBay and Amazon and this strategy. I mean, the one is an external channel and one is a strategy to grow your, to grow the share of wallet of your existing audience and expand that audience. But it's about, your kind of authority and right to play in these areas. So, as a, Barbecues Galore strategy, which I'm sure Angus will touch on in more detail later, is not about a free-for-all of letting anybody come onto their website. I mean, it is a highly curated, highly invitation opportunity for select sellers that remain true, the products that they bring that will remain true to the brand identity that is Barbecues Galore. And the same goes for any retailer in this strategy. I don't think you're going to see Barbecues Galore selling car tires, in the coming weeks. It's about what is complementary, adjacent, and also non-competitive to the core range, and what makes sense to the customer. What is actually logical to purchase in that purchasing journey.
Great. No, I think that makes complete sense. I guess then when we're thinking about it being an opportunity to expand your range online, Angus, what do you see as the key advantages, both to Barbecues Galore and I guess more importantly to your end customer?
Well, I think starting with the customer proposition in mind first, and that's probably the most important thing, and I'll make this point clearly, is that if you haven't got your core brand proposition right and you haven't got your core range right, this won't work. So it's not to supplement or replace getting your core range right. Absolutely, that is your home turf, and you need to make sure that that's 100% where you need it to be. This then goes beyond that core offer to just complete the solution for the customer. And I think from a customer proposition, it's just about providing a more comprehensive assortment of products to give them the best availability of options. A big principle that we're applying though, when we think about the way that we would do this, and Richard touched on this a moment ago, is curation rather than aggregation. So a typical or a traditional, let's call it mass merchant marketplace, is literally just trying to amass the largest SKU count you possibly can. Obviously, we want to try and build out our assortment substantially here, but it's absolutely done in a way where it makes sense for us to sell that product, and it makes sense for that to be part of what we put towards our customers, not just in terms of the category, but the nature of the product. And the other thing, of course, is the partners that we work with around their ability to deliver a service that is consistent with our expectations, because obviously they're doing that on our behalf. And from the customer's perspective, they're interacting and engaging with Barbecues Galore. And if anything goes wrong, it's our brand equity that's on the line in that case. So it is a very careful process for us to think about where we want to go to and who we want to work with and who we want to partner with on this journey. But it's obviously at the same time gives us the ability to quickly scale that when we get all of those important decisions and settings right.
No, that makes complete sense. I think the other thing that really strikes me for someone like Barbecues Galore is also the frequency of purchase, right? So can you talk to us a little bit about that? I mean, obviously a barbecue can be a big investment for some customers. So how does this range extension really help from that perspective?
Well, I think it's a really important point to make, and this is probably true of many retailers of durable discretionary goods. The average barbecue lasts 7 or 8 years, so most people don't buy a barbecue on a whim. It's generally a fairly considered purchase, and is something that is not bought frequently. However, what we're absolutely seeing changing is the way that people are really embracing that lifestyle that comes with that particular product. And so we are really focused on growing our assortment of products that really complement and go with that core purchase. And so whether that's accessories for the barbecue or helping people to embrace and explore different styles of cooking. And so within our ranges, we're already doing a lot in this space and bringing in a lot more of those products that really complete the solution and experience for the customer. By taking on a marketplace approach allows us to then go well beyond that and actually really get a much broader lens on where those opportunities exist. And selfishly, by the way, it also helps us to understand a little bit more about those opportunities that maybe we hadn't thought of, that our customers are saying, actually, yes, if you did range those products, you could bring them into your business. And one of the things which I know is a logical pathway here is there might be people that we're talking with where maybe the product's a little bit out there and mightn't be something that we would necessarily make the decision to immediately range. We're having conversations today to encourage those products to be listed on our marketplace. And then if that works in that environment, we might then re-engage at a later date and say, actually, that's been going really well. We'd love to range your products into our stores and into our business.
Yeah, it's true. It's a great mechanism to kind of test and learn, and I guess really hear from that customer, what is it they want from Barbecues Galore? You can kind of make that happen in a low touch kind of way compared to having to stock it yourself. Rich, can you share with us other examples? I guess, you work with a whole, broad spectrum of different retailers. So on the range extension front, what kind of examples and results you've seen there?
Yeah, it's certainly the strategy that successful retailers are really trying to adopt in this space is about remaining purposeful to who they are. I mean, even Woolworths in this market, whose everyday market is now live in market, and supported by a marketplacer. The Woolworths construct is about everyday needs and serving everyday households. So as large as that product spectrum could be, they won't betray that. They won't go outside of what is, true to that kind of, that theme that they approach their customers with. And even to the point, another example, Marketplace of Power's Surf Stitches solution in this space. And Surf Stitch is about the coastal lifestyle, space really. And that's a pretty broad, spectrum. And so they're not about to start selling products that don't fit under that banner. But one of the areas that you might be sort of surprised with in this is around kind of how they approach that range selection. Surf Stitch never really sold surfboards, which is a bit of a surprise to most people. I mean, when you think about it, it's a pretty difficult category to sell. It's expensive, it's very difficult to warehouse, it's very hard to ship. And so it's an area that they've hugely expanded through this strategy because and there's hundreds of different suppliers. And so they've been able to really go after what you'd actually think should be a core product proposition for that brand. Another area that they've had tremendous success in through this strategy is health and wellness. And so an entire range of beauty products and moisturizer and shampoos and things like this that their customers they know would purchase, and they're able to test and learn. And there's certainly some cases across both of those retailers and others where they've probably got it wrong a couple of times on certain products, but the beauty of getting it wrong in this space is you never had to make the inventory investment. And so one of the areas that we definitely come across in our consultations with retailers is it's the buying teams of these retailers that absolutely love this strategy. This becomes an arsenal, a weapon in their arsenal for them to go, you know what, I can take some risk here, and I can actually look at products and test and learn, win fast and fail fast. Without having to put my hand up to the CEO and say, hey, I need a huge investment to go and buy a new category. So it's, when I say take risks, they're sticking true to what the identity is, but I think it's about what they're trying to solve. The products need to be relevant. I talked about surfboards, and we've seen this with other businesses too, often big and bulky and just products that you knew you'd be able to sell, but it's just a complicated product set to actually service. And then, to your point around frequency with Angus, what I kind of bring it back to the core themes around what are the strategic advantages of doing this. One is to sell more products to the people you have and grow the CLV. Two is to add increased frequency, to Angus's exact business case, to have a product range of a lower ASP, with even a perishable range potentially, where people come back in a repeat visit, whether that be fuel and things like that. And then an incremental product set that in a digital environment where you're not their first consideration purchase. So where there's a category where people aren't searching for the barbecue isn't the first search term they put into search, Barbecues Galore has a chance to win that customer because they're widening the funnel.
You can win that hot sauce customer instead, and then before you know it, they're buying a barbecue.
Absolutely.
So when we're talking, I guess, about that range extension, Angus, how do you decide where to focus first?
Well, I think it comes back to that point which we made earlier, which is where does it make sense to play that we're not playing already? And so that really comes back to really thinking about how you've positioned your brand and where does your brand give you permission to play? Clearly, we're not going to venture into categories where it doesn't make sense for us to do that and where customers wouldn't anticipate that to be part of our proposition. It needs to be logical that it fits within our brand and very importantly, doesn't conflict with our brand or the way or the values that come with our brand and what our brand stands for. So that first and foremost is the most important point. Does it align with your brand? And that sounds like an easy question to answer. Obviously, the more you think about it, the more complicated it is. But does it align with the brand? Does it make sense for us to play in that space? And does it have any conflict with the core parts of your range? Now, there's lots of different ways to answer that question, and it will differ from category to category, but it really is that sort of top-down thinking around, okay, is this strategically aligned at a brand level? Does it make sense at a category level? Are we working with the right partners to bring it to life?
Yeah, I like to, before your point around, I guess, creating that sense of community as well, right? And the content opportunities around that. So instead of just talking about barbecues, now we're talking about, what does the Sunday barbecue look like? What are the recipes that go with that? What other utensils and tools and things like that do you need? And kind of becoming the authority in that space.
Absolutely. And I think that's it. It's just, again, about broadening the completeness of our solution. And that's really the way I think about it, is it's about the giving the full suite of options, supporting that core proposition.
Yeah. And it's speaking to your customer in a way that's not only transactional, right? It's
Absolutely.
actually forming that relationship with them so that they want to come back and see what's going on at Barbecues Galore.
And it probably goes back to the point which I started with a little bit earlier on, is this is more than just a decision about the assortment. It actually rolls back up into a much broader discussion about your brand, the role you want your brand to play, and the relationship that you want to build and cultivate with your customers.
No, thanks for that, Angus. Rich, I have one for you. When we're kind of talking, I guess, about the marketplace's scaling, how far, wide and broad do you think retailers can go before it just gets ridiculous?
I mean, this is a strategy, unlike implementing a new email marketing tool that is going to increase your open rate by 0.5% or something like that. And not to belittle those solutions, but this isn't a small move. This is a strategic opportunity or a solution or a strategy that people should go after to make a big shift in their business. I mean, this is people partner with us because they're looking for a 30% uplift in their online sales. If you look at successful businesses that have implemented a big third-party product range, this has the power to make a huge jump at that top line. So from a scale perspective, it's absolutely that. And certainly from a commercial aspect, it is still the customer that you own, but in terms of how that commercial structure rolls through, this works at scale. If you want to add 50 products to what you sell, you don't need a marketplace strategy to do that. You can do that. This is about, hey, there's an opportunity that sits over there that I don't have to spend millions of dollars to go and buy that. So from a scale perspective, I think it has the power to be very significant. And without specifically naming some of the larger enterprise businesses that we partner with, they are looking to double the range they have for sale. So this is about businesses making a fundamental shift in what their product offering is. And that happens over time. It's not about smashing it day one. And so I think from, how far and wide do they go? Often I get asked the question, although less and less lately as people sort of understand this space a little better, is how much room is there? Like, there's, how much room is there for all these marketplaces? Surely this has got to stop. And the reality is at a mega level, with the big four in this market, eBay, Amazon, Catch and Kogan, yes, it's crowded for sure. But when you look at this strategy, I actually don't look at it as these are more marketplaces entering that. This is just a solution retailers are adopting. Barbecues Galore is not changing their name to Barbecues Galore Marketplace. It's not the Surf Stitch Marketplace. And in actual fact, if you look at, Surf Stitch and Myer are great examples. It takes a trained eye to even know if it's a third-party product because the customer is still purchasing it from that brand. It is still Myer selling the product. And yes, in a lot of cases, it's coming directly from the third party to the seller. But Myer, it's Myer's reputation, it's Myer's customer. If something were to go wrong, Myer is the one to solve it. And so it's not about them screaming to the world, I'm now a marketplace. It's just, I have some incremental new product ranges to sell, and I have a relationship with third parties to service that. So as far as the space or the scale in certainly in Australia, I don't see it as a question of, is there enough room? I think it's just an opportunity for businesses to attack it as a growth strategy.
I think it's a really important point that you make there, Richard, which is it's not a marketplace per se. It's actually some technology that's supporting a broadening of the online range. And that's probably a fundamental way of thinking of it, that it's not this sort of separate entity. It is actually something that is integrated and woven into your core offer online and just about building a more comprehensive, singular experience for the customer.
I think that's a really important clarification to make. And as you said, Rich, sometimes the customer won't even be able to distinguish, who this product is coming from. And I guess in a way, though, that poses its own set of challenges. So Angus, from your perspective, do you have any concerns around the fact that you're not owning that entire process from clicks to delivery when you are introducing these third-party sellers?
Well, and I think that's a really important point, is you don't own the process, but you're still accountable for it. And so you need to make sure that you've structured things in such a way that you're able to actually manage that. So that then comes down to both what you're doing internally to make sure that you're appropriately resourced for it, but also being discerning about the relationships and the partnerships that you establish for people to carry out these activities on your behalf. Because if you haven't got a good, robust partnership in place, then obviously, that's when things will go wrong. And, if somebody lets you down, it's your brand that suffers the damage as a result of that. So really putting the work in up front to make sure you're working with the right partners to bring that to life is really important. And so I think that's just it. It's not about just working with anybody and everybody. And it goes back to that point I made earlier about curation rather than aggregation. Aggregation is just a free-for-all, let anybody on and go for it. Curation is, it fits, it makes sense, I'm working with the right partner.
Yeah. And with that, I guess, how do you then decide which sellers to list? What does that process look like?
Yeah, well, look, obviously we're working through that at the moment. We've only recently announced that we're going down this path. And so we've had a lot of early interest from potential sellers that have engaged with us. And some we've obviously already locked in, others we're working through at the moment. And it really is, working through that criteria that we spoke about a moment ago. Fortunately, there are a number of people that are obviously already doing this in some other distribution channels and have some pre-existing capability that are probably more ready to go than others. But then there'll be other partners where maybe they've got a great brand or a great range of products and they're not already, well set up to work with marketplaces that will work with them to help get them up and running because we think it's important for them to be part of the journey. So it's just about making sure that we've got the horsepower internally to manage that process, manage the onboarding and establishment of each of those partnerships.
Rich, what's your perspective on that kind of strategy, I guess, of who do you let in to your online store?
Yeah, it's obviously important. I mean, you're kind of inviting someone into your house, really, and so you've got to be very careful about what that is. And it's, as Angus said, it's still your customer. So I think it starts with being incredibly purposeful about what the strategy is. And even our biggest clients are not trying to do 15 new categories day one. It's about being purposeful and meaningful. So if I'm going to add an incremental category that's not a core range, I need a meaningful offering. I need product depth and product range, or range authority, I suppose is the phrase in retail. And so what sellers are actually going to provide that? And there's really two broad considerations. Like, what is, from a product offering perspective, like who has the product? Who's going to help me win in that category? And then the second is service capability. So who can actually service my customers from that fulfillment perspective, in keeping with how my customers expect to be treated from my own site. And so you have essentially seller standards. So you would pretty quickly as a business establish kind of what is the call it the low watermark, that everybody below that is not capable. And I think we're lucky enough that in a lot of categories now, in sort of late 2021, people selling on external channels, sales channels, whether they be the big megas like eBay or whether they are other marketplaces, is not a new concept. So there's plenty of businesses out there that are embracing a multi-channel sales structure, which means that they're already doing it. They're used to taking an order from a site and providing it to a third party. So that platform or that pathway is already well worn. But I think a big part of it is, a good, better, best strategy. You obviously want the best product and the best price within a category. And then you obviously want range authority through that. So starting small in terms of picking those categories and nailing them before going rats and mice across 15 different categories, I think is a successful path.
That also gets me thinking about a common misconception I think there is, that the sellers on your site are going to be smaller than you. So I think, we can see potential for big partnerships where, even a small part of, a partner's product range makes sense for Barbecues Galore, for example, and you can stock them and then I guess have the power of both brands kind of backing Barbecues Galore rather than it just be your own.
I think it's just probably an important point to make there. It's actually about thinking about the occasion of the customers shopping in. And, this is an opportunity to engage with somebody in a particular mindset, in a particular moment that you might not get access to through your own channels. And I say this as somebody, our business sells on other marketplaces as well, by the way. So, with the same mindset that we're gaining access to a customer that we might not otherwise have a conversation with. So that would absolutely be true for those that might want to engage and be part of this process for our brand is an opportunity to connect with that particular purchase occasion. Obviously as a destination for the category, we get hundreds of thousands of users every week to our website of people who are in the mindset around barbecue that if you want to engage with that particular customer, it's a great avenue to bring that to life and make that connection where people might not necessarily think of you in the first instance, that you may well have products that appeal to that category in other distribution channels.
That's Angus just nailed their value prop to sellers there, which is, you want to talk to my audience. This is my audience. They're engaged in this category. Their first consideration is this category. That's exactly it. So whether you're a small seller that has one product that is, it might be a particular accessory that works well with barbecues, or you are a major retailer that is non-competitive that wants access to that customer because they might have, and an example is with Surf Stitch. General Pants is a seller for Surf Stitch. I mean, General Pants is an enormous retailer with physical outlets, but there's no cannibalization there. There's no crossover. You've got their customer and General Pants, and they feel like there's a porous wall there that they can actually both benefit from that. But the value prop is the operator, the marketplace operator. or that retailer running it is, I've got this particular audience and they're highly engaged in my category. There's an opportunity for you to sell to them.
No, it makes complete sense. I guess to change angle a little bit, Angus, I'd be interested to hear from you, when we're thinking commercially about how this works, how is your marketplace strategy different to a standard retail strategy in that respect?
Well, I think one of the things that is different, and it depends on, I mean, obviously there's some implications from an accounting perspective around how you recognise this revenue, which is a conversation that obviously will be different for every organisation. The fact is, though, it's a different commercial construct. So you have to have a different way of actually approaching it. Clearly, you've got another partner that is carrying the cost of holding inventory and managing some of those logistics costs. And so, of course, you're going to have a different margin expectation than to a product that you would carry in your own business. And just as a business has different margin expectations for a product that they import and distribute themselves versus maybe a brand they distribute from a local partner, because obviously at each level working your way up in that, how more vertically integrated your supply chain is, obviously comes more cost and therefore an expectation around greater margin delivery. It is really thinking about the endpoint, which is what sort of return do I need at the end of the process, net of all of those costs, and does that make sense? So typically, I would say a lot of retailers get caught up on the top line sales and margin question, and rather than thinking about how much net profit am I actually making at the other end of the process. And you absolutely have to think about that differently, because clearly a third-party product being sold on your website, you're going to make a different margin than product that you sell yourself. That also is, though, important why you need to think about making sure you're not duplicating or overlapping with your core range, of course, because clearly your own product that you distribute yourself is something that you want to make sure you're driving volume into. But you've got to recognise that these complementary categories, these are products that you wouldn't have otherwise sold anyway. You're not incurring the same costs to sell them. And so it's then much more about thinking about the finished margin, the margin at the end of the process, whether that is compelling and whether you're getting a return on investment or not. Clearly, to make a business case like this, you've got to make sure you've really thought deeply about all of those things, and you've got some very clear commercial measures of success, because you've got to obviously be able to be satisfied that you're getting a return on investment, of course. And there's obviously a lot of work to do to make sure you get these things up. There are costs that the business will still incur, those extra customer service costs and some of those other pieces. So it's not simply as easy as just plugging in and suddenly you've got all this extra revenue that washes straight through to the bottom line. Of course, there is some costs that are incurred in managing that experience. So you really do have to have a well thought through process around what the commercial model is, what costs you're incurring, what costs you're not incurring, and how that washes out in terms of an endpoint.
Thanks, Angus. And Rich, I guess, how does Marketplacer help retailers to kind of understand what that opportunity might look like, and also how to think about that commercial model a little bit differently to what they've done traditionally?
Yeah, I mean, obviously supporting a business case is pretty critical. So this is, Marketplacer enters into, long-term partnerships with our clients and with a mutual goal to, to grow the revenue associated with this new strategy. But I think and so supporting that business case, we run a number of workshops to help them identify what are the economics of a marketplace model? What do they look like compared to that of a retail model? And Angus touched on it, right? If you just examine the unit economics of a wholesale retail model versus marketplace, marketplace where as an example, taking a 15% clip of a ticket versus a retailer that's got gross margin of 50%, obviously that's different. But it's not the same. It's not apples for apples, as Angus quite clearly articulated. It's the costs associated with the cogs of a retail model and that don't exist in a marketplace model, such as owning the stock and shipping the stock, etc. But also to even bring it up a level, this is an opportunity that can be done at obviously for scale, but at speed. And so when you think about the concept of, sure, take that 15% as a hypothetical, 15% of a clip of a sale in a strategy where you could double the range of your online store in a year and add 30% top line, 30 to 50% of growth in terms of top line sales, that is significant from a speed perspective, but it's also at scale. So I think, we support businesses to understand that, marry it up with what their strategy is from a seller acquisition and category expansion strategy is, and how that rolls through in a business case, so they kind of can put their own assumptions in to understand what that will spit out. But I think, to reiterate, it's something that can be done at speed and at scale, and it's not something that that is necessarily measured the same way as a retail model.
Thank you for that. Angus, what's the longer term view on Barbecues Galore marketplace development? Where do you see this going into the future?
Well, I think it's not overly different to what I've spoken about, which is just about us pulling together the most comprehensive solution for those that love barbecuing just as much as we do. And that'll be, there's a lot of logical opportunities that fit around where we can go with that and what else we can do to complement and build out our offer. But also that point I mentioned a little bit earlier on is a great opportunity to get real customer feedback around ranging opportunities for our business. And so, we've been very focused in our business on new product development and bringing in, new product and evolving and updating and modernizing our range. And this is a really important feed into helping us to identify those opportunities just as much as it is about that revenue opportunity and the opportunity to build out that connection with customers over time. So, we're very focused, as many businesses are today, on building a compelling omni-channel strategy for our business. I personally am a very big believer, particularly in a considered purchase category like ours, of the importance of both a physical and digital presence and the way that they integrate with each other, but also complement each other, and the sum should be greater than the parts. And so it absolutely makes sense that while we're very focused on high involvement, high engagement physical stores with a great focus on inspiration and engagement, that our digital channels go well beyond the four walls and deliver that most comprehensive offer for our customers.
Thanks, Angus. Well, that takes us just about to time for my Q&A, but it would be great now to hear from everyone else on the call. So if you do have any questions, please make sure that you add them. We do have one here from an anonymous attendee, sounds very mysterious, which is, what about the customer service costs and possible hits to brand equity? When you don't control the operational processes and service proposition, this can be tricky.
Well, I think, Richard touched on that before, but I'll make this point again, is you do have control over it. That comes down to the partnerships that you establish and those seller standards that you set up for those people that you work with. Part of the economics of going down this journey is you do need to also make sure that you're internally resourced to manage those pieces, because this is not as simple as just plugging in, a few thousand SKUs and then stand back and count the money. No, you've actually got to make sure that the offer is consistent with the overall brand purpose that you're delivering, that the partners you're working with have the capability and skill set, and you've got all the right integrations in place so that you can manage that experience for the customer, and that your key service areas of the business are appropriately equipped to manage that, because that absolutely is part of the journey, is that if something goes wrong, the customer has a problem, they're going to pick up the phone and ring Barbecues Galore or write an email to Barbecues Galore rather than that third party that's acting on your behalf. So there's a lot of risk that comes with that, but that's part of really thinking through when you're building the business case for this, to make sure that you've accounted for those as part of the equation.
Great, thanks for that, Angus. We've got another question here from Imogen. What's the resource set up to run this internally, headcount wise, versus your online core resources? Maybe
I can take that to start and Angus probably finish off with his experience. So it's a really important question because, and I talk about the opportunity to add double-digit growth to your online sales. So to think that this doesn't need to be resourced is obviously naive. It absolutely does. Ultimately, this solution or this strategy typically sits within the e-commerce division of a retailer. Obviously, there's a lot of shared resource that live in there, because we're not talking about in majority of our partnerships, we're not talking about a separate website, a separate destination, separate marketing. We're talking about adding to the existing structure. So whilst there might be an uplift, there's a lot of shared resource that goes along with that. It's important that as part of that there's company-wide buy-in, particularly from, say, the merchandising buying team. You need to make sure that the company embraces this strategy and that the third-party product is not in conflict with first-party product. It can't be a second-grade citizen in that regard. So that's not specifically around resourcing, but an important structural element. The area that is fundamentally new is seller management, seller both commercially, business development, and onboarding. That's something that a retailer wouldn't be doing right now. You'd be dealing with wholesalers and vendor, obviously dealing with putting them on as vendors. But in terms of going to market as a business development action, doing the deals with the sellers, suppliers, and then technically onboarding them onto your marketplace through that integration, into the marketplace platform, that's fundamentally new, and that's typically one of the first resource hires that most retailers would make. Is that a fair summary, Angus? You're pretty early on in the stage.
Yeah, and look, I wouldn't go into the detail for obvious reasons, but I think broadly speaking, I think the point is it's not going to operate on autopilot. You will need to resource for it, and that's part of the plan that you need to put forward.
Great, thank you. We now have a question from Lani, who says, "Thank you so much for your discussion. Was there anything during the deployment of the new marketplace strategy that you didn't expect or were surprised by, unintended consequences?" So Angus, obviously appreciate that you're at the beginning of this journey. You're rounding out your strategy at the moment. But perhaps, Rich, you can talk to previous implementations you've seen and anything that kind of cropped up that potentially you weren't expecting.
Sure. I think maybe from Angus's perspective, he probably didn't think he'd end up on a panel. But
none of us did,
and we thank him for that, as we do you, Steph. So no, I think that it depends how hard and fast retailers want to go at this strategy. But there's no doubt there is a learning curve, both adopting a new piece of technology, like it's probably nowhere near as robust as replatforming an e-commerce site. It's a SaaS platform that gets integrated into an existing stack. But there's a learning curve without a doubt for understanding how a marketplace operates. So, and I've been lucky from a domain expertise perspective to understand kind of the commercial model that sits around marketplaces and the different commissioning levels on categories, and which is all public information for people to find out. That's pretty straightforward. But learning how to manage a new type of relationship, which is that of a third-party seller versus a wholesaler, is without a doubt a learning curve. And that's both from how, what are the objections that sellers might have about selling on a marketplace where it's not their customer, and that value proposition, how you distill that down into something that is meaningful to sellers. And then the area without a doubt is, there's the friction that exists around integrating sellers to a platform. Every seller is on something different. There's a lot of common platforms out there. Obviously Commerce Cloud, Shopify, BigCommerce, etc., that are these off-the-shelf e-commerce stacks. But you're also dealing with vast degrees of sophistication on sellers. There are one-man bands and one-woman bands that sit there operating almost out of their house or their garage that they require a bit more hand-holding. And then there's highly complex e-commerce stacks that you're looking to integrate. Now, Marketplacer does a lot to solve that, but ultimately learning that friction and learning how to solve for that in a timely manner is sort of about going into it with your eyes wide open.
I might just add to that, although this is my first foray in using the technology that Marketplace provide. It's not my first experience with running extended ranges of product online. And so one of the things which we certainly are very aware of going into this, and is a topic that I can tell you to those that are retailers out there, and noting that often, in a Nora webinar, the audience are often overwhelmingly the e-commerce folks in an organisation or into these conversations from an e-commerce lens. What I can tell you as a bit of early warning is that point that Richard made earlier about the alignment of strategy with your merchandise people, your product team or whatever you might call them, is critically important. If you don't have a very clear set of rules around the way that will work, that will absolutely result in some internal disruption. And so it is absolutely not just about a technical integration. It is that clarity of a broader strategic position around when will you address something through a category manager, when will you refer it into your marketplace, and how does that dynamic work? If you haven't got some clear rules of engagement around that, it will absolutely cause you some heartache.
Thanks, Angus. Another question that I know crops up a lot is, how do you deal with it from an omni-channel perspective? So if you are stocking or appearing to stock all of these other products via range extension on your website, and then not doing that in store, how do you kind of manage that process? And do you potentially use it as an opportunity to eventually stock some of those products in store?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I think I gave some examples of that a little bit earlier, that we certainly see that. And I can say this, again, from my past experience of doing this, where we've put extended ranges of product up online, that if you don't communicate clearly to the customer that that's an online only item, you will absolutely have people turning up in stores saying, hey, I saw this thing on your website and I want to buy it, and why isn't it here? Mm-hmm. So that integration with your availability messaging, and obviously typically, we've got things that are available for click and collect and delivery, things that might be delivery only or available for delivery to store, is making sure that that messaging is all very clearly articulated in one place. And we don't have this situation where a marketplace item looks different to any other item in our business in terms of the way that we clearly articulate that. So that when a customer's looking at a product on a product display page or wherever, it's very clearly articulated what those availability options are. Now, as I said before, we already have products in our business that are only available for delivery, that aren't stocked in our stores. And so really a marketplace item would look no different from that, but it is absolutely about making sure that that's very clear. And I can think of an example when I was at another retailer. We went and put an assortment of a particular product up on to our website as an online only extended range. And, we had, complaints right across the store network with people coming in saying, hey, I've seen this thing on your website. Where is it? Why don't you have them here? Obviously, the penny dropped there that, gee, maybe we should actually range these in our stores and go and deploy that range into our network. But we absolutely also did a lot of work around much more clearly articulating the availability options so that the customer can clearly see what's an online only item, what's available in store, what's available to click and collect, and so on.
I think there's two themes there, Steph, as well, is that it's an opportunity to perhaps create a bit of an incubation program where, Amazon famously has launched a marketplace to drive buying insights for their retail business. The same principle can apply here. And it's, where you're having that discussion as a buyer, do I range it? Do I not? Well, I've got a marketplace. Why don't you start there and prove it? And then you get some data insight, both on the customer and the product. So that's a nice kind of incubation step to becoming a first party product. But the second is kind of the theme that has definitely been evolving over the last few years in retail globally, where physical footprints, while still enormously relevant, can potentially move towards more of a showroom style. And I think Barbecues Galore is a great example of that. Obviously, they've got a huge range of product for sale, but you walk into just the image that Angus has got there now, and certainly some of the new store formats, they're immersive experiences. They've got barbecues, cooking, and it's less stack it high and let it fly, the old retail of 10 years ago, and more about a showroom where the website becomes the source of truth for the range. And that's where you buy. And I think we're seeing that across all verticals in most regions around the world.
I think that really makes sense about kind of creating these destination stores, both physically, in terms of, creating these experiences for the customer that are totally immersive, and then being able to tap into that range extension, even with, your store staff saying, well, yeah, I can get that in for you. I can get that shipped straight to your door, whatever that looks like. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. Were there any final thoughts or tips and tricks, Rich or Angus, you wanted to share before I wrap up?
No, look, I'd take this opportunity to say thank you, Steph and Rich, for the conversation. Look, we're really excited about this opportunity. It's a great way for us to really build out our offer and provide a more comprehensive solution to our customers. So we're really looking forward to the opportunity that it presents, and glad to be working with each of you as partners in bringing that to life.
Thanks, Angus. So I guess I just want to thank everyone so much for tuning in today. Thank you all for your engagement and for the great questions. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Rich and Angus, for joining me and sharing all of your insights. It was super interesting, and just really appreciate you taking the time to do that. As I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, this session has been recorded, so it will be sent to all attendees. So look out for that email. And also just remember that this is only one of a 3-part series. So we do have another 2 coming, all focused around the power of marketplaces. So episode 2 is going to cover optimizing marketplaces innovation for growth with some really inspiring case studies. And this one's on Friday, October 15th. And then episode 3 is focusing on the unbeatable marketplaces. What's the key? On Friday, November the 5th. So please make sure that you register for those to join the conversation. We'd love to see you there, and hopefully you enjoyed this session. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks, guys.